All right, on the assignment last week on correlations and causation and writing research statements for those two things, I know some people had some issues with it, so I thought I'd create a video. Maybe it'll help you out. First thing right off the bat, when you write up research questions, you can use the word cause in the causation statement. But in a correlational statement, I know some people use the word cause there too. You don't have the word cause in a correlational statement. Me personally, when I think about correlational research statements, I will say the word relationship. I won't say the word cause, I will say the word relationship. As an example of both of these, for the correlational research statement, I will investigate the relationship between income and happiness with a correlational design. So I'm looking at two variables, happiness, income, and I'm going to see if there's a relationship between those two variables. For the causation statement, I will investigate if viewing images of weapons causes a person to become more aggressive. So correlational relationship with the causation, cause. I am saying in my hypothesis here, viewing weapons leads to aggression. On the correlational, the two variables are related somehow. There's a relationship, but we don't know which causes the other. So in my example, higher income, which you would think would lead to more happiness, or it could be the other way around, that a more happy person ends up getting a better job, ends up getting the promotions, ends up, going on to grad school, and they end up making more income. So it's possible that either one of the two is causing the other one. In the causation research statement, I could do a true experiment there. So randomly assigning participants to view either images of a weapon or images of something else doesn't have a positive or negative valence to it, and then measure their aggression. And that research actually has been conducted. Something else to think about with causation, it is going to be really hard to make a causal statement for something that happens in childhood and how it affects you later on in life. Because, and it talks about in the book, those different criteria for proving causation. One is that you have to be able to rule out other variables. And if you're looking at something over the lifespan, you're not going to be able to rule out other variables. You don't have really good, strong experimental control. When you run a true experiment and you have one group here, you can make that causal statement. You can say this one thing that we changed caused this other thing to happen. But over the lifespan, there's too many things. You have no experimental control. Too many things could have happened to you during that time to change your attitudes and behaviors. And so you can't really make causal statements like that. What you would say is you could run longitudinal statements, and you could also do correlations and regressions. But as far as saying this thing that happened in childhood caused this thing in adulthood, that's generally not how it's going to work. Another way to look at this, it's a little bit more advanced, but just stick with me for a second. Think about how you are going to run the statistics. If you think, okay, I've got these two different variables here, I've got these two different groups, what kind of a research design is this? What kind of a statistic am I going to run on this? A lot of the time on correlational designs, you are looking at variables that are like on a scale. So like happiness would be on a scale. It would probably be a Likert scale where you ask, how happy you are from 1 to 7, strongly agree, strongly disagree. So it's on a scale, it's spread out. Income, it could be anything. It could be 0 to, a super high number. So anyways, the point being is that, these are going to have an average. You're going to have an average for happiness. You're going to have an average for income because there's going to be a lot of variability among those answers. I actually ran the stats here. If you were looking at this, here's the average income. In Excel, you can do that pretty easy. Get the average income, get the average happiness, and you can actually do the correlational too in Excel. It's a really high correlation. The numbers are made up. I just made them up. So it's a really high correlation. On the causation statement, though, the experimental data, the aggression is on a scale like the happiness was, strongly disagree to, or in this case, you would probably measure it in some other way. But let's say it's on the scale from 1 to 7. The other variable, though, is dichotomous. There are only two groups in this example, the people that viewed weapons and the people that did not. So in this example, it is dichotomous. There are only two groups. You are only a 1 or a 2. And so that is a big difference between having groups, which you would have in experimental data. You are always going to have groups in experimental data. You might have more than 2, but in this example, it's just going to be 2. It's going to be a t-test is what that's called. But you won't necessarily have groups with a correlational design. See, there are no groups with income. There are no groups with happiness. You're just looking at these two variables and seeing if they're related there. Related to this, in the second discussion question, you were going to pick a method for your research. And some of you picked a survey, which is fine. Surveys are going to give you descriptive statistics. So like this is going to be a descriptive statistic. It is describing something about the people that responded to your survey, that on average, the income level was 78,000. It describes your sample. With that survey data, you can also do a correlational analysis like I did here. So if you send out a survey, you measured income, you measured happiness, you could take those two variables and you could do a correlation. And that's going to be an inferential statistic where you are trying to infer something about your sample. All right, hopefully that at least, maybe if it doesn't clear it up, at least maybe it gets you thinking a little bit more about some of these topics. Thank you very much for listening.